to just tell us why we changed and how it looks like and where we are going. I know part of it is in court, but that doesn't stop you from talking about the policy end to it.
Thank you much, moderator. Comrades power. Comrades power. There is quietness there. Or you are TikToking. Is it TikToking? Comrades power. Comrades rear. Comrades transact. Thank you. It will be confirmed. Thank you very much. The leadership of the UDA party, represented by the Secretary General, and herein having the National Treasurer, Honorable Japhet Nyakundi, and all the protocols observed, our chief guests, the comrades. I'm happy that this session is here not only to advance the comradeship in the UDA, but also to mentor the young people so that the strategic intent of His Excellency the President is realized. He talks about the next generation, and this is a deliberate effort to build leadership for the next generation. Quickly, going into the new funding model, it is one of those policy conversations that have gone on, and we continue to engage. And I want to point out that the government of Kenya is obligated to provide public good. And one of those public goods is education, both from the basic education, tertiary, and higher education, that is at university. It is also a fact that for a long time had attempts towards funding universities in Kenya. And as we sit here, early 90s, there were very few universities, and currently public universities together with the private ones have increased in number. And the government is largely concerned with funding students who are admitted to undertake regular programs in public universities, but through a legal change, the amendment of the University Act 2016 provided that government also funds students in private universities. The new funding model came on board because of the issues that were raised in the previous funding model, otherwise called the differentiated unit cost. It has always been an argument that it takes a cost to, for a student to pursue a particular program in the university. The differentiated unit cost was framed in such a way that a number of factors will be considered to arrive at a cost of a program. But what happened is that those factors will be aggregated in a manner that will arrive at an average cost and not the exact cost of offering the program. And even with that average cost, it was clear that government was to fund 80% and household was to fund 20% of the differentiated unit cost. Ever since it was initiated, it happened that government was not able to meet its 80% of the differentiated unit cost, and that way, the framework that was used, which was a capitation framework, where every university will have an account, or let's say a vote with the treasury, and the money will go to the universities and not to the students. So the new funding model came on board, one, to be very realistic with regard to the cost, the exact cost of running a particular program. So if it is law, if it is medicine, if it is sociology, there is the exact cost of funding or of running that particular program. So then government is here buying the services from the universities. The long period of government not meeting its 80%, it made a number of the universities run into bills, and some of them were declared or almost being declared bankrupt, actually insolvent. By the year 2022, 23 universities were technically insolvent. So to sort that issue out, we formulated the fact that one, we need to look at the exact cost of the program, and two, we need to look at the mode of funding. The mode of funding was migrated from funding students at the same level in all programs in the university to fund a student specifically, so that if you are undertaking a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology and another person is undertaking a Bachelor of Science in biochemistry, the cost of running those two programs will be different, and the funding will then be provided for to the universities to follow the students. Secondly, it was established that in our Kenyan society, we have households that have got different economic or income means. And from the 2020 Kenya National Bureau of Statistics household income, annual incomes banding, we found out that there are 5 bands. The lowest one is at 5,000, and the highest is at 120 and above annually. So we then established that different students in our Kenyan society who get to universities actually come from families that have got different levels of incomes. And then, using that particular information, we were able to argue a case that in the old funding model, students who come from humble backgrounds, students who come from backgrounds that are able, they are funded equally. So in the spirit of equity, in the spirit of inclusivity, we found out that there was discrimination in the previous funding model. The new funding model then will consider a background of the student in terms of ability to pay in order to determine the level of need of funding and the cost of the program. Then, we asked ourselves a question. How does government then do the funding? One, students who are at the bottom of the pyramid, those that are vulnerable, those whose annual income is below 5,000, will have access to a higher proportion of the scholarship and a lower proportion of the loan, and the lowest proportion of the household contribution. And the students, and that figure, then that percentage continues to be incremental to those that are in band 5 who are able to fund to a particular degree the level of the loan be able to repay. Then the scholarship is lower and the household contribution is higher for purposes of equity. Now, ever since this model was then introduced. Students who get admitted to universities, you are required, you get a letter admitting you to a university, and you are told the cost of the program you have been admitted for is 720,000. You are then advised to apply for funding from the Higher Education Loans Board, and in the application, you are supposed to supply particular information. This information, the family background, the primary school that you attended, then the size of the family, and the rest of other details are then taken on board to construct what is called the means testing instrument. So the means testing instrument is not just a creation that is theoretical. It is practical, because it is the information that is provided for, that when it is analyzed, it places you in a particular band to exhibit and demonstrate your level of need for funding. 2022 KCSE students who were admitted to universities, the new model was applied, and it was fully, they were fully satisfied, and it was only in the 2023 KCSE admissions that issues were raised. And I can tell you where the issues were raised. The issues were just in the operationalization of the means testing instrument, because the information that is provided by the applicant, when processed, it then places a student in a band that they feel they don't belong to. That was the major issue. And therefore, it is what I believe the committee that has been established, and the probably issues that will be canvassed in the judicial system, that we will need to deal with the means testing instrument, but most importantly, the information that applicants give. And the model is very dynamic, in the sense that if you apply during your first year, and in the course of your study, either, unfortunately, we don't pray that that happens, you lose a parent, one or both, then every year you are supposed to update the system. And that is how then the model is dynamic. It responds to the changes in the dynamics of the applicants, but also it looks at the economic situation of the applicants. Ever since this new model was introduced, government budget to education and to higher institutions of learning was increased so that many of the universities that were actually being declared insolvent, the vice chancellors of those universities have come out and have said they are coming out of the indebtedness that the old funding model had driven them to. And therefore, as we engage in this conversation, truth be told, that we are not all equal in terms of economic power. That many of the students who are from the humble backgrounds could be excluded to access higher education because of the inability to pay for the higher education. And that therefore speaks to the priorities of the better plan that the government is using in running the affairs and administration of its affairs. The core principle of inclusivity, that no one will be left behind in this administration, and the students and the children from the humble background are equally brought into the fold to access education from the very basic all the way to higher education. And therefore, that is the whole logic behind the new funding model. The very finer details that I have not been able to talk about here could be issues that will be canvassed in courts and so forth. But I've just provided a broad rationale why the new funding model was introduced. It was based on fact, it was based on empirical evidence, and if anyone is seated here, you could access for the last 5 years what used to happen in the differentiated unit cost funding framework and what has happened in the new funding model starting from the year 2022, and you will be able to have a comparative analysis that is empirically informed, and you will have a conclusion that the new funding model is actually working to get many students into universities and to get many universities out of their indebtedness. Thank you.
Clap for him. It's just important to remind you guys that before HELB, there was something called HELF, established in 1952. In 1992, we reviewed that and came up with HELB. So the arguments that it has always been constant is not true. We graduated from HELF, that is the Higher Education's Loan Fund of 1952 that was changed in 1992 to come up with what we have as HELB, and now we are trying to move to a new platform.